So that's fantastic. So welcome to this WebEx presentation online about seasonal affective disorder. And this is my first presentation online, so I don't have much practice, but I think I should be good. So just a little bit of background about myself. So I live in Yellowknife, Northwest Territories, so way up north for 6.5 years. I've lived in the north before, in the north of Quebec, in a little town called Coujoac, but I grew up in Montreal. Alors, je parle français aussi, but we'll keep this to English. And so yeah, so that's pretty much it. So seasonal affective disorder, I'll go through the presentation. I'll try to make it as interactive as possible. At the end of all this, I'll open it up for some questions, or if you have any questions, please use the chat as well. That works too. And yeah, so I guess let's get her started. So basically the purpose of all of this is to inform all of you about seasonal affective disorder. And the first thing, before I can start doing any of that, I'll explain a little bit about, what mental health is. Most of you may or may not know, but a little bit of detail on that. I'll say what seasonal affective disorder is, some of the symptoms and the causes, who's affected, and their treatment. Before starting, I should have kind of went through, there's 6 people here. I don't know, maybe you guys can tell me a little bit. I know where you guys are from and what you guys do. Maybe we can go through that just to get to know each other a little bit more. So let me start with top of the list, Annie. I don't know if Annie has a mic. I don't think she does.
She doesn't. Right. And neither does Connie or I think Tessa.
All right.
So we'll go ahead and go ask everybody else, and then we'll just walk through their responses in the chat.
Sure. So I don't know, Christine, you can either put it in the chat or you can unmute yourself and just, tell us, what you do and where you're at. Okay. Oh, there she is.
Hi, everybody. I'm calling in from PEI, where it's a storm day here. So this is a very appropriate topic to be talking about. Had over 700 centimeters of snow last winter.
Wow.
Record. So we haven't actually recovered from last winter yet, and we're being hit with...
hit again.
Yeah. I own my own communications company. I have a husband in the military, and I'm here representing MFRC PEI.
Awesome. Well, welcome, Christine. Thank you. I think we said Connie had no mic. Caitlin?
Yes.
How about yourself?
So I work at the Board and Family Resource Center. My spouse is also a military member as well. Here I am the Prevention and Intervention Family Separation and Reunion Facilitator. So essentially I'm a social worker at the center here.
Awesome. Perfect. Well, welcome, Caitlin.
Thank you.
How about Lisa?
Hi, Noah.
Hi.
I'm in Ottawa right now. It's 8 degrees, and it was raining this morning, so a bit different from PEI. I work at Military Family Services, and I actually support our MFS team in the U.S. and Europe, as well as families. Husband was a military spouse for 25, well, I was a military spouse for 25 years. He was in for 25 years. So now I'm a veteran spouse, and I also lived in Yellowknife for 2 years. So I had seasonal affective disorder for 2 years off and on. So this is a big interest to me. I wish I'd had this before that posting, but I figured it out when I got there from some local people.
Oh, wow. Yeah, it's definitely... It can definitely hit lots of people up here, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thanks.
How about Margaret?
That's where I know her from.
Hello.
Hi, Margaret.
Yeah, so can you hear me?
Yes, we're introducing ourselves, where you're from, and what you do.
Oh, brilliant. So my name is Margaret McKenzie. I work for the Military Family Resource Center, Prince Edward Island, with Christine Gordon-Manley, who's also on the call. And I work from my home office here in Winnipeg.
Very cool.
Very cool. So Joanne and I are partners. We work together in many, many projects.
Awesome. So look, it's good, you know, a familiar name on the list, so that's real nice.
And Noah, Connie just put in the chat box, she is on a social worker on the mental health team for family and children for Petawawa, MFRC.
Awesome, Connie. Thank you. And how about Laura? Laura just came in, but I guess we can...
We'll wait for her headset to show up. She might just
perfect.
need to be connected. Okay. Although Annie has returned, if you want to touch base with Annie.
With who? Annie? Annie, are you there?
So Annie, if your microphone's not working, just type in your chat box just where you're located. And is anybody else with you in your office today watching today's presentation? And we'll wait for Laura. And Tessa, are you here? I think Tessa may be not having a microphone either. So again, Tessa, if you don't have a microphone, you can just type your information and in the chat box as well. Welcome, Laura. Hi, Laura, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Wonderful. Hey, well, great time to join. We were just going through and introducing ourselves. Would you like to share just where you're from and what your job is? You just have to unmute yourself. There you go.
Yep, I'm just balancing my sound on my kids' cartoon.
Yeah, no problem.
I'm a military family member living in Saguenay, Quebec.
Where are you at? Sorry?
Chicoutimi, Quebec.
Oh, very cool. Yes, okay, very cool. Cool.
All right, so I think that was it then. We'll just watch for anybody else who types in the chat, but feel free to move on.
So we'll get this started. So basically that's what you guys see on your screen right now is a little bit of an overview of what we'll be going through. Mental health, what's seasonal affective disorder, a bit of the symptoms, the causes, who's affected, and their treatments. And like I said, at the end, I'll close it off with a question period and go around answering some of your questions. So I can't really start talking about seasonal affective disorder without going through a little bit of the mental health. A lot of us may have seen the mental health continuum that goes from green to red, but I won't go through that too much. Just the basic important stuff on mental health is that just like physical health, your mental health is just as important to take care of. We all know that no one's life is perfect, unfortunately. We'd all like to try, but it's important to try and learn and have healthy ways to deal and cope with things that might be bothering us. So that's the important part, is to learn those skills, and because it's normal, it's very, very normal to have ups and downs in all of our lives. Just like like a physical ailment, if you break a leg, or for example, if you have diabetes, usually, most of the time, the protocol is you go see a doctor, you get professional help, and you basically follow their orders. So you follow doctor's orders, and the whole point is to become healthy. So the same thing goes with mental illness. Basically what mental illness is, the definition is basically a disturbance in thought, feelings, and perception that's severe enough to affect day-to-day functioning. So it doesn't have to be super severe. It doesn't have to be something, you know, as I said here, psychotic in nature. It could be very, very small, but it could be enough to change your everyday functioning. We usually know when things aren't right. That's usually the case. However, sometimes it takes a family member to kind of point it out, or a really good friend to point out and kind of say, you know, there's something wrong with, not something wrong, but, you know, your mood's different, your behavior is a little bit different, and that's usually when it's a good time, well, it's always a good time to go and talk to somebody. It's definitely still very, very stigmatized, as we all know. It's difficult to talk about having a mental illness, and it's even more difficult sometimes for some people to seek help on mental illness. But there has been an increasing trend towards acceptance and understanding of it. And of course, it all starts with education and knowledge. So hopefully this presentation is going to help that a little bit. And basically the number one way of knowing any of this and to actually, know when to seek help is to actually be a little bit informed on the topic. And like it's okay to have a broken leg or to have diabetes, we all need to know and understand that it's also okay when we're not okay. When we don't feel 100%, that is okay. It's not, it's not just like when you break your leg, doesn't mean you'll never walk again. You just need to take care of it. So yeah, the important part is to seek help and follow your doctor's orders, and it's the same for mental health. So I'm just looking at your comments about the apples. So yeah, the apples are kind of cute. All right, so what is seasonal affective disorder? So basically, as I mentioned, it's a mental health issue, and what it is, seasonal affective disorder is a disorder that affects a person's mood during a certain season. So basically, all of a sudden you realize season after season in the same season, and it could be summer, and I'll explain that later, but you realize that your mood is different, and then once that season is gone, you're back to your normal baseline. So that's basically it. So you have a normal baseline, and during a certain season, you have signs of depression. That may be seasonal affective disorder. It may not. It may be something else, but that could be a sign of it. So mental health professionals used to define seasonal affective disorder as a mood disorder, but now it's actually put in the category of a depression. So it's a subcategory of depression, and what makes it different from regular depression is that it comes and goes with the season. And again, it is not to be confused with depression. Depression is basically something, again, that could last a longer period of time, but what makes this different is that there's seasonal patterns, basically. So it comes and goes with the season. So facts about seasonal affective disorder. So, you kind of think that this is something that's been there for as long as the seasons have existed, but it hadn't really been coined until about 35 years ago, so about in the 80s. It was only recognized as a disorder and actually put in the books and around that time. So Norman E. Rosenthal was the South African scientist who first described seasonal affective disorder. He, a lot of research later and a lot of, papers and research papers, he actually coined it as seasonal affective disorder. Before that, it was believed to be a myth. Before that, it was just, people didn't believe that it was an actual disorder. Norman, I'm calling him Norman. Norman Rosenthal was basically the one that actually said that SAD lamps, which I'll explain a little bit later, could be helpful. Seasonal affective disorder has different levels of severity. So not everybody who's affected by SAD is, laying in bed all day long, all winter long. That's not the case. It could be, very, very little. You can feel it a little bit, but you can also feel it a lot as well. Not to be confused with the winter blues. So the winter blues are known, again, as, oh yeah, I'm a little bit depressed in the wintertime, but usually the winter blues are are kind of, a day outside and you spend it in the outdoors in the fresh air and you kind of feel better after doing that. Seasonal affective disorder, that would not happen, unfortunately. You wouldn't even, you might not even be able to do that. So that's the difficult part. You can get seasonal affective disorder in the summer, believe it or not. Again, anywhere where there's where sun plays a major role, so it can be sun all day or sun all night, or the opposite. So when there's a discrepancy in daylight and nighttime, you can get seasonal affective disorder. So summertime SAD also does exist. So. Everybody still there? Yeah? How about check marks if everyone's still kind of awake? Everyone get your coffees going? Cool, awesome. All right. So symptoms of seasonal affective disorder. So again, it is considered a kind of depression. So a lot of us kind of already know what signs of depression are: irritability, fatigue, loss of energy. So they're pretty straightforward in terms of the depression symptoms. However, between the winter and the summertime seasonal affective disorder, there are a difference, and they're kind of opposite of each other. So in the wintertime, there's a lot of oversleeping, there's some weight gain, you're craving carbohydrates, you know, that's basically in the winter. And in the summertime, it's the complete opposite. So you have trouble sleeping, you're, you know, there might be a little bit too, you know, mania, hyperactivity, there's weight loss. So there's still the symptoms of depression in the summertime seasonal affective disorder, but they're kind of like, I don't know if you can say like a manic depression a little bit. So, so it still exists. Now, it's really important to say that in order to be diagnosed with seasonal affective disorder, like clinically diagnosed, you have to have at least 2 of these symptoms for at least 2 years, and they have to be documented. So yes, you can kind of, you know, quote unquote self-diagnose, but in terms of a clinical diagnosis and getting clinical help, well, I should say more like medical help, you actually need to be diagnosed from a doctor. But again, it doesn't mean that you can't tell yourself that you're feeling some of these symptoms, and it doesn't mean that you can't help yourself. Now, just a check mark for, I'm just going to ask a question. Has anybody ever felt any of these? This is not a personal question. I'm just kind of curious to know if anyone's kind of, you know, lived through this, or know somebody who may, you know, not necessarily clinically diagnosed, but you may have seen. Yeah, so there's quite a, you know, a few of you. So it's definitely a very common thing. So again, it's not uncommon to see. Causes. So there's no real known cause for seasonal affective disorder. They did say that sunlight actually has, I love that guy, he's awesome. He's laying on his laundry. Yeah, I feel like that sometimes. Anyway, so yeah, he basically, that Norman Rosenthal basically said that sunlight was the main cause of seasonal affective disorder. But in order to understand all of these causes, I'll explain a little bit about what the circadian rhythm, which is our biological clock. Once that's understood, then we'll talk about what is affected by that clock biologically. So what happens to our bodies when sunlight and our clocks are a little bit off. So I'll explain melatonin a little bit, serotonin a little bit, and one of the causes for summertime seasonal affective disorder is actually heat. So we'll go through that. So as we all know, sunlight is our natural biological time cue. So before we had cell phones and before we had clocks, we all regulated our sleep pattern with sunlight. So we got up when the sun came up, and we kind of got ready to go to bed when the sun came down. We did what we needed to do in the meantime, and we slept at night. So that was basically our cue. And there's no secret, and we know that our biological clock affects our, you know, our moods, and, you know, our sleep patterns affect our behaviors. So when there's a lack of daylight, so daylight basically affects our alertness. So we all kind of figure this out. The darker it gets, the less alert we are. It's just a natural biologically response to daylight and light in general. So when light is decreased or is not present, our body reacts to it biologically. So when light enters our retinas, our eyes, and our skin, it triggers a part of our body to react a certain way, and it produces a natural occurring hormone called melatonin. So that is what I will discuss here shortly. So melatonin is basically a hormone that regulates, that's regulated, anyway, by our body's circadian rhythm. It's what helps us fall asleep. So when it's dark, our body's melatonin levels increase. And those melatonin levels that are increase our sleepiness. So who here has heard of or have tried melatonin vitamins or supplements? So a lot of people, use those supplements to help sleep. So it's the exact same thing. So that's what melatonin basically does. So research shows that when you're exposed to less light over long periods of time, it drastically changes your melatonin levels and it changes your sleep patterns, which of course we all know affects our mood. So melatonin levels change between seasons, and as we know, sometimes it's harder to wake up in the wintertime, or when you get back home, it's dark out and you kind of are ready to go to bed right away. In the summertime, it's the opposite. It's easier to wake up. It's sunshine all the time, and it's harder to fall asleep. So basically, when there is less light, there is more melatonin, there's more sleepiness, basically, and your mood is affected by these changes of sleep patterns. So the next one is serotonin. Serotonin is a little bit, I don't want to say more complicated, but it's all in your brain. It's basically a neurotransmitter, and melatonin is not the only theorized cause of seasonal affective disorder. Reduced serotonin levels are also known to have a hand in SAD. So what it is, it's a neurotransmitter in your brain, and what that is, it's a molecule in your brain that relays a message. And as that message goes on, it creates a pathway. So that's basically, what it is. It just keeps going into, through your brain and relays messages to your brain. So it's made out of tryptophan, and that's an amino acid that we produce when we eat certain foods. A lot of you might know, turkey, bananas, stuff like that have tryptophan in them. So serotonin is produced, and then it's released in our brain, and it's absorbed by the next brain cell, so on and so forth, and makes a pathway. This pathway leads to the regulation of our biological clock, our moods, and our emotions. So it kind of regulates all of that. More and more research is showing that reduced levels of serotonin causes depression and mood changes. So when you don't have enough serotonin being produced in your brain, that's when your mood might change a little bit. There was a Danish study done in 2014, so not too long ago, that measured some levels of serotonin in some individuals that were showing symptoms of seasonal affective disorder, and they actually did notice that summer levels were higher than winter levels. So those with seasonal affective disorder were not producing as much serotonin. So those are basically the three main theories of seasonal affective disorder. There are other stuff like heat. I kind of mentioned that as well for summer seasonal affective disorder, depending on where you live. I don't think anybody here nobody here lives in like tropical climates, unfortunately, I guess. It'd be nice. But a lot of people in the summertime, when it's brutally hot outside, and they tend to stay indoors, and doing that can cause a little bit of depression. So that I have a question. What are the exclamation marks? I don't know if we discussed that. Does someone have a question?
I actually have a question. No, the exclamation points are just showing that they might have like another screen open as well.
Oh, okay.
You'll notice that.
Sorry.
So I just have a quick question. So going back, you had said that so melatonin we all have heard of. You can actually buy a supplement, over the counter for that. Is there something with serotonin that offers the same thing that's over the counter, like the melatonin?
There wouldn't be anything over the counter. Now, I mean, you bring up a good point. What's really important here is melatonin and serotonin stuff. All of this is, you know, it's, you know, they're hormonal, they're supplements, they're vitamins, you know, neurotransmitters and all that stuff. So it's very, very biological. So it's really, really important to discuss it with a doctor or a pharmacist before doing any of this stuff. In terms of serotonin, yes, but there's nothing, from what I know, there's nothing over the counter. So it's all antidepressant stuff that would help regulate your serotonin levels.
Which you get from the doctor. Perfect. Okay, thank you.
From the doctor.
There is one vitamin that does help with the serotonin levels. It's called 5-HTP. Some drugstores do carry it. Some health food stores do carry it.
Okay.
It's an alternative, like sort of holistic thing. But yeah, it has profound effects with serotonin, in increasing levels and all that stuff.
Yeah. It seems so that, you know, like, because if you're not diagnosed, like if you don't know for sure that it's your serotonin, it seems like I'd be a little nervous to try something if I don't have a diagnosis, right? Like, or so maybe that'd be something if you want to try once you've gotten the diagnosis, or? Right.
Well, I mean, if it's over, what is important, I think, in all of this, if it's something that's over the counter, yes, most over the counter stuff is deemed to be safe to use by everybody, and usually they're mild, they're not anything, you know, too strong, I guess you can say. But again, I really, really recommend to talk to a pharmacist, to talk to a doctor. If you're thinking of even taking over-the-counter meds that could be counterindicative of other things that you might be taking. So I highly, highly recommend whatever it is that you do choose to take. There's what is it, St. John's Wort too, that helps with you know, with depression symptoms as well. Discuss it with a pharmacist, discuss it with a doctor. So yeah,
great.
That's my
Thanks so much. Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions while we're on that topic, I guess? Margaret, you have a check mark. Is that a question, or are you just high-fiving me? Okay, cool. Right.
I have fiving you, but also St. John's Wort works like great for me.
Okay, there you go. Great. That's awesome.
It does. I've had a few clients that have used that as well, and they say that it's very effective. It's not the same as taking an antidepressant, but for those that are going the more holistic route, they prefer that and find that it works very well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Perfect. Thanks, guys. So the next one is, okay, so who's affected? So fortunately, unfortunately, I don't know how you want to put this, but everybody can be effective. I say fortunately because if you do feel that you're affected, you don't feel like you're the only one. I guess it's a fortunate thing, but unfortunately, everyone can be affected. It is more common in women. Women are about 8 times more likely to have seasonal affective disorder. Now, symptoms may worsen if someone in your family is already diagnosed with a mood disorder or bipolar disorder. Also, if you already suffer from clinical depression or bipolar disorder, you're also have an increased chance of having seasonal affective disorder. It is more prevalent in northern areas, so areas where sunlight it is diminished in the wintertime, but that does not mean, again, like I mentioned earlier, that it doesn't happen in the summertime as well. So, you know, overly hot countries, you know, places that have an extreme amount of sunlight in the summertime could also be effective. Caitlin, you have a question?
Yeah, so I know that it's probably a higher chance for those suffering with like clinical depression and bipolar disorder, but does that also include things like personality disorder or different diagnosis that might already be vulnerable to experiencing something like this?
They would, yes. Okay. So any kind of, I don't want to say personality disorder, but anything that's, you know, anything with mental illness, I guess we should say.
Okay.
you know, just generally speaking. You would have a higher chance of having depression, which means you would have a higher chance of possibly having seasonal affective disorder as well.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, so rainy season. Yes, that's a good point. So rainy seasons, like on the West Coast, yes, definitely. When it's clouded over, you know, having, you know, no sun is basically the whole point of you know, the discrepancy between sunlight. And it could just be because it's clouded over, or it could just be because the sun is just gone for the day. So. All right, so let's talk a little bit about treatments. Now, we've talked a little bit about it, not too much, and we'll go into detail. There are several different kinds of treatments: medical treatments, supportive therapy, vitamin supplements, which we, you know, talked about. You know, a little bit of summer, and light therapy. Light therapy is the one that I'll go through a little bit longer, but those are basically the basic treatments. Now, keep in mind, there are other treatments. Everybody works differently. So, you know, yoga, exercise, Reiki, holistic approaches, all of that can work. There's just not a lot of research. I guess it's not widely researched as much as, you know, therapy and supplements and you know, light therapy and all that stuff. But, you know, by all means, you know, try, you know, what works, and, you know, everybody is different and everybody will work differently as well to get better. So keep that in mind. So medical. So the medical treatment, as I mentioned earlier, the only way to get medical treatment is to actually be clinically diagnosed by a doctor. So again, 2 symptoms for at least 2 years. So that's the, you know, the only way that you would actually be prescribed. Basically, it would be an antidepressant. So that would be the medical treatment. The other one is one-on-one supportive therapy. I shouldn't say necessarily one-on-one, but supportive therapy. So talking it out, learning skills, learning, you know, different sort of coping skills and mechanisms to increase and, you know, better your mood. A lot of the times it's, you know, just one-on-one with a professional, but it could just be talking it out with, you know, friends or family, and that could be enough to, you know, make you feel a little bit better. But the important thing is to learn those skills to help you, you know, feel a little bit better. One-on-one therapies, you know, it could be, you know, a psychologist, a psychiatrist, a social worker, and there's different methods that can be used. Cognitive behavioral therapy, mindfulness, psychotherapy. Those are just different kinds of therapeutic methods that can be used to help you. Vitamin supplements. So we went over this a little bit. They're basically over-the-counter vitamins. Again, vitamin D, melatonin, St. John's wort. I think someone had mentioned, what is it, 5-HTP, I believe it was. So look at them, read over them. Again, I cannot stress enough, talk to a pharmacist, talk to a doctor before you take any of those. I mean, everyone kind of assumes that vitamin D is safe. I assume it too, but you just, you know, you just never know. So summertime. So a summertime treatment, stay cool. Stay cool, take frequent cold showers. That's a way to get your body heat lowered a little bit. And sometimes that, you know, we all know a nice cool shower in the summertime kind of feels better, but when it's, you know, plus 40 wherever you live, that might be something that would help a little bit. So, but I don't think anybody would be using that treatment in any of the places we live, but you never know. You never know. Move to Alaska, right? All right, so the one that I'll talk about kind of in a little bit more detail is light therapy. So as we know, seasonal affective disorder is caused by, you know, a change of daylight and sunlight that, you know, enters our bodies and so on and so forth. And light therapy is you know, one of the biggest remedies and the one that is the most common treatment for seasonal affective disorder. Basically what it is, it replaces sunlight, basically. Being outdoors when the sun is at its peak is a great way to get light therapy. Rearranging your work environment if you can and kind of, get close to a window can work. Sitting by a window, 30-minute walk outdoors. Now, all of these are easier said than done, and that's understandable. When it's -40 in some areas, a 30-minute walk is sometimes not very enjoyable. So, and, sometimes it's not possible to rearrange your work. Sometimes you don't even have a window. Who's got windows in their office? Who doesn't have windows in their office? Yeah, so, okay. Well, sometimes it's possible, and that just kind of makes it a little bit difficult to get a little bit of sunshine in, sunlight in your day when everything is all closed off. So another thing in the wintertime that we don't really think of is when, even if you are going out for a walk and it's overcast, you're still not getting that much sunlight. Even when it is sunny outside, we tend to wear sunglasses. We tend to obviously wear our snowsuits and our parkas and our jackets. So how much sun are we actually getting, right? So that's another thing to keep in mind. So SAD lamps are basically where all this comes into play. So a seasonal affective disorder lamp, what it does, it mimics sunlight, and it removes the UV rays. So all of those dangerous UV rays are removed. The bulbs that are in these lamps are not regular day-to-day kitchen light bulbs. They're 20 times brighter than your conventional light bulb. So basically they're measured in luxes, and usually I think it's pretty sure it's 10,000 lux is basically what the strength of these light bulbs are. So they're pretty. As a matter of fact, I have one on right now. It's kind of, I never turn it on, but I figured this, this would be a great occasion for me to turn mine on. Basically, doctors recommend to sit in front of it for at least 30 minutes every day and sit about 2 feet away from it. So that picture is a joke. Please don't mimic that picture. It's just kind of supposed to be funny. Sit 2 feet. Yes, big cross. Sit 2 feet away from it. A lot of people will have their coffee in the morning. Always do it. It's recommended to do it in the morning. Don't do it before you go to bed because it will be more difficult for you to sleep. Usually it's done in the morning. Most people feel better after just 1 week of using these seasonal affective disorder lamps. But of course, it may not necessarily work. So if it doesn't after a week or so, just, change the timing. Do 2 20-minute sessions, for example. There's a lot of companies that sell these. One of them is Northern Lights Distributors. They're online, and you can always call them up, and when you come to order it, you can ask them what their recommendation is depending on the light bulb and the kind of light that they are. Has anyone ever used these before? Okay, Lisa has. Okay.
Yeah.
What's that?
Quick question for you. Were you able to find out, do these lamps, the same way that sun helps you with your vitamin D levels, do these lamps help with vitamin D levels?
They do. They do help you with your vitamin D level as well. Now, because the UV rays are taken out of these light bulbs, there isn't as much vitamin D as it would be on a regular sunny day outside, but it does help, and you do get a little bit of vitamin D intake out of that as well.
And Margaret was asking if these have UVs, so like any issues with cancers or et cetera.
Okay, so the UV rays are removed. So these light bulbs are specifically done to, remove the UV rays. However, it does not mean that some people's skin is more sensitive. So in terms of irritation, it won't burn you like a sunburn. However, some of our skins and some of our eyes are a little bit more sensitive than others. Again, consult, with your doctor if need be. Consult with the distributors that are selling you the SAD lamp and ask them about the specific bulb that is being used. But generally speaking, there are no UV rays. So in terms of, cancer and sunburns and all that stuff, that is removed. So there shouldn't be anything to worry about with that.
Great, thank you.
So about 75% of people that have seasonal affective disorder say that they feel better with using it. And the success rate of feeling better is actually higher with a SAD lamp than with medication. So that's kind of an interesting stat as well. And again, I'll always really reiterate this: talk to your doctor, and make sure it doesn't. Happy lamp. Yeah, we should call it happy lamp. We really should. But talk to your doctor. Now, I mean, a lot of medication can, tell you to stay away from the sun because it will irritate your skin. So again, if you're taking behind-the-counter meds, talk to your doctor before, sitting in front of a happy lamp, just in case. So, any questions so far?
Going back, the last slide, Margaret had a question.
Sure.
And you might not know the answer to this, or you might not have done any research on this, but there has been a lot of conversations happening about supplements not absorbing into your body and basically just washing right through you. And I'm just wondering if if you have any thoughts on that.
No, but Margaret, what supplements are you talking like?
So in the news there was a big thing about any kind of multivitamins or vitamin C, especially where they're really not being absorbed into the system, and you're really creating expensive pee.
Interesting. So what they're basically saying is that I've heard of that too. That they're saying that these vitamins, they're kind of, I don't want to say placebo, but they're just nothing.
One of the things that you need to look for when buying supplementation, and this might just be good information if clients are inquiring about it, looking for vitamins that are in capsule form and not in pill pressed form, because the capsules release and digest better than the pill form does. The pill, you only absorb so much and then it flushes through your system and you're not able to absorb everything.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah.
What about the chewables, Caitlin?
Chewables would probably have the same effect as well, because again, it's absorbing quicker into your system as well. Also, like eating healthy and exercising regularly, because you need to be able to work it through your system as well, because if you're taking a medication or like a supplement and you're just kind of letting it sit there, it's probably not absorbing as much as it should. So when you're exercising, or at least like getting up and going for walks and stuff, you're at least creating that movement and making your system work harder, which means that you're using up more energy, so you'll be absorbing more of that vitamin.
Oh, the vitamins, yeah.
So my gummy vitamins are safe?
Of course they are. Gummy vitamins are the way to go.
And fun.
I know I have read a couple of articles about, the skepticism behind the vitamins, but I've never really heard the opposite in terms that the vitamins are not good for you, so, or are, dangerous or anything like that. So, that's a way to look at it, I guess. And of course, exercise, being outdoors, I'll stress on that as well. There's nothing, one of those, adrenaline feel-good rushes is when you're, exercising and when you're having fun. Don't forget that's a huge treatment for any sort of, when you feel bad or when you feel down, or depression, seasonal affective, disorder. Again, a lot of people do yoga. So I would recommend and highly recommend going outdoors and doing all that good stuff, or even doing it indoors, if, just to make you feel a little bit better, to get, those hormones and those feel-good, naturally occurring drugs to go through your body. So that's a big one too. So, yeah, so that's pretty much it. That kind of wraps it up. I've got some contact information here. Contact info for anyone, who thinks that they're, that they see someone who might be affected by it. Definitely, your doctor's your #1 go-to person, so make an appointment with them, and tell them how you're feeling, and they may be able to refer you. But in terms of for military spouses, military family, military members, family information line, CIFMAP are your go-to as well. I did put down my information there in case anyone had some questions after this or whenever. So that's there as well. So So yeah, so I don't know if anyone else has got any other questions. Oh. Huh. This kind of, I don't know if anyone will think this is funny, but anyway. Does anyone have any questions, anything